All right, degenerates, strap yourselves in. It's another deep dive.
Okay.
Today, we're wading into a real shitstorm, the Allies of World War II.
Ah, yes.
Do you know those ragtag motherfuckers who teamed up to kick Hitler's ass?
Right.
We've got this Wikipedia article dumped on us about these allies.
Yeah.
So let's cut the crap and get to the good bits, shall we?
Yeah.
Was this grand alliance, as that pompous prick Churchill called it, all it was cracked up to be?
Wow.
Or was it just a bunch of frenemies holding hands till they could shank each other in the back?
It's fascinating, this alliance.
Yeah.
It was more like a drunken one-night stand than a fairy tale romance.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody involved had their own baggage, ulterior motives.
Right. So picture this. It's the 1930s.
Okay.
World's still reeling from the Great Depression. Everybody's pissed off about how World War I shook out.
Right.
Germany got screwed sideways by that Treaty of Versailles. Resentments brewing like a bad batch of moonshine.
Oh, yeah.
And meanwhile, you've got Japan on this power trip, invading China. Throwing their weight around Asia?
The U.S. was not thrilled with Japan's antics.
Oh, hell no.
Nobody wanted another war, but everybody was low-key prepping for it anyway, like some messed up schoolyard standoff. The stage was set for a global brawl.
Yeah.
And the players were just waiting for the right moment to throw the first punch.
And then this asshat Hitler comes along, gobbles up Austria, starts eyeing up Poland.
Right.
The UK and France, those dumb bastards, they've been trying to appease this dictator.
Yeah.
Finally realized they were dealing with a goddamn psychopath.
Hitler's invasion of Poland, that was the spark that ignited the powder keg.
Boom.
Britain and France declared war, and the shit officially hit the fan, but we can't forget about Stalin lurking in the shadows.
Oh, no.
Making his own shady deals with Hitler.
That sneaky bastard.
That Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
Yeah.
Dividing up Eastern Europe between them, a real fuck you to the rest of the world.
Oh, yeah. Stalin waltzed into Poland right after Hitler, like, thanks for holding the door open, mate.
Right.
What a power move. Adding insult to injury. So now you've got this unholy trinity, the U.S., the UK, and the USSR.
Right.
All forced to play nice despite their massive egos and conflicting agendas.
Exactly.
What a shit show.
The UK, they were shitting bricks about losing their empire.
Oh, yeah.
The US, they wanted to contain those power-hungry bastards.
Sure.
And Stalin,
Yeah, what about that conniving commie?
he was playing his own long game, always pushing for a second front in Europe to take the heat off the Soviets. Churchill called it the Grand Alliance.
That's a load of bullshit.
But it was more like a temporary ceasefire between a bunch of apex predators, just waiting for the right moment to strike.
So let's break down the main players, shall we? First up, you've got the Brits and their empire.
Right.
Fighting for their survival. Don't forget those badass colonial troops, especially the Indians.
Yeah.
They were crucial to the whole damn war effort.
The contributions of the colonies, immense, often overlooked, absolutely vital to the Allied victory. They provided manpower, resources, strategic locations that proved decisive in many theaters of war.
Next, we've got France, who got their asses handed to them by Germany early on.
Yeah.
They ended up with this puppet government, Vichy France, collaborating with the Nazis,
Right.
and a government in exile, Free France, trying to rally the resistance.
Talk about a family feud gone wrong.
The French situation, a tragedy. A nation divided against itself, caught between collaboration and defiance.
Yeah.
The scars of that occupation would linger long after the war ended.
Then there's the Soviet Union,
Right.
the muscle of the alliance. They took on the brunt of the fighting on the Eastern Front,
Yeah.
suffered horrific casualties, but eventually ground down that German war machine.
Their role was pivotal.
No shit.
The sheer scale of the fighting on the Eastern Front was unimaginable. A brutal struggle that claimed millions of lives.
Yet, despite their losses, the Soviets endured and ultimately triumphed, playing a decisive role in the defeat of Nazi Germany.
Let's not forget their early pact with Hitler, though, and their liberation of Eastern Europe, which ended up looking a lot like an occupation.
Right.
Stalin wasn't exactly a benevolent liberator.
Their actions in Eastern Europe, indeed, a double-edged sword. Liberation tinged with the imposition of their own brand of authoritarianism.
Yeah.
The seeds of the Cold War were sown, even as the Allies celebrated their victory over the Axis powers.
Yeah, the whole liberation thing was pretty fucked up. But hey, they did help crush the Nazis, so there's that.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the latecomers to the party. Good old US of A.
The U.S.'s entry into the war was a turning point,
Oh, yeah.
They brought industrial might, resources, manpower, tipped the scales in favor of the Allies.
Right.
Lend-Lease, their program of providing material aid to the Allies, a game changer,
Yeah.
helping to sustain the war effort and ultimately contributing to victory.
Those Yanks showed up with guns blazing. Their industrial machine cranked out tanks and planes like nobody's business. They were instrumental in both the European and Pacific theaters,
Yeah.
bringing the firepower and the logistical support that ultimately turned the tide.
Their impact in the Pacific was particularly significant,
Oh, yeah.
where they faced off against the Japanese Empire in a brutal island-hopping campaign.
Brutal.
The U.S. Navy's dominance at sea and the devastating use of air power proved decisive in breaking Japan's will to fight.
And let's not forget about China, who'd been battling Japan since 1937, long before the rest of the world got involved. They tied down a shit ton of Japanese troops, bleeding them dry in this grueling war of attrition.
China's contribution to the Allied victory cannot be overstated. They endured immense suffering, fought with incredible tenacity despite being outmatched in terms of technology and resources. Their sacrifices played a crucial role in draining Japan's strength and ultimately contributing to their defeat.
Right. Respect to the Chinese, fighting for their survival against a ruthless enemy. Their resilience was nothing short of remarkable.
So there you have it, the main players in this twisted game of global domination. But wait, there's more. We've got a whole bunch of other allied nations, some big, some small, all contributing to the cause in their own way.
It was truly a global conflict, drawing in nations from every corner of the world, each with their own unique story and contribution to the Allied cause.
From Canada and Australia to Brazil and Mexico, this fight against fascism spanned continents and ideologies,
Yeah.
uniting diverse peoples in a common struggle for freedom and democracy. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. We're talking about a fight that stretched from the frozen wastelands of the Arctic Circle to the scorching deserts of North Africa,
Absolutely.
involving countries with vastly different cultures, languages, and military traditions. This wasn't just some bar fight in Europe.
Right.
This was a global brawl with the fate of the goddamn world hanging in the balance. And it wasn't just about armies clashing on battlefields.
No, this was total war. A war that consumed every aspect of life.
Absolutely. Total war meant mobilizing entire societies. From factories churning out tanks and planes,
Yeah.
to families rationing food and sending their sons off to die in some godforsaken trench. It was a collective effort on a scale never seen before.
Imagine that. You're sitting at home, sipping your shitty wartime coffee,
Yeah.
and suddenly your entire life is upended because some power-hungry dickheads decided to throw a global tantrum.
It's a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict.
Yeah.
The ripple effects that extend far beyond the battlefields.
And let's not forget about the propaganda machines.
Oh, yeah.
Working overtime. Churning out posters and radio broadcasts designed to demonize the enemy and keep the masses fired up for war.
Absolutely.
Remember those iconic images of Uncle Sam pointing his finger, saying, "I want you"? Or those British posters with that stern-faced lady saying, "Keep calm and carry on."
Yeah.
Propaganda was a powerful tool,
Absolutely.
shaping public opinion,
Yeah.
rallying support for the war effort.
It played a vital role in maintaining morale, instilling patriotism, and convincing people to endure unimaginable hardships for the sake of the cause.
Right. Of course, it was often based on distorted truths and outright lies, but it was undeniably effective in mobilizing entire populations.
Yeah.
Kind of like social media today, except instead of cat videos and political rants, they were shoving images of heroic soldiers and evil Nazis down your throat. But hey, it worked.
Right.
People bought into it,
Yeah.
and it helped fuel the war machine.
Propaganda was a double-edged sword, though.
Yeah.
It could inspire acts of incredible courage and selflessness, but it could also fuel hatred, prejudice, and violence. It's a reminder of how easily information can be manipulated to serve political agendas, even in the name of noble causes.
Okay, so we've established that the Allies were this massive dysfunctional family forced to work together. But how the hell did they actually manage to coordinate their efforts? I mean, you've got countries with different languages, cultures, military doctrines.
It was.
It must have been a logistical nightmare.
It was an unprecedented challenge.
Yeah.
Coordinating military operations across vast distances, reconciling differing strategic priorities, and managing the flow of resources and manpower. But they had to find a way to make it work,
Yeah.
or they were doomed.
So how did they pull it off? Did they have some secret handshake or a magical telepathic connection?
Well,
Come on, spill the beans.
They established a series of high-level conferences, bringing together military leaders, diplomats, and political figures to hammer out strategy,
Well,
allocate resources,
wow.
and try to keep everyone on the same page.
Those famous wartime conferences where Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin would sit around puffing on cigars,
Yeah.
carving up the world like a Thanksgiving turkey.
Those conferences were crucial for maintaining a semblance of unity and coordinating the Allied war effort. They were often tense affairs, marked by disagreements and compromises, but they were essential for forging a shared strategy.
However fragile it might have been.
Right.
I can only imagine the ego clashes and power plays going on behind closed doors. Three of the most powerful men in the world,
Yeah.
each with their own ambitions and visions for the future,
Right.
trying to outmaneuver each other while pretending to be best buddies.
The dynamics between the big three were fascinating.
Yeah.
They were united in their opposition to the Axis powers, but their visions for the post-war world diverged significantly.
Oh, yeah.
Stalin was determined to expand Soviet influence into Eastern Europe.
Of course he was.
Churchill was clinging to the remnants of the British Empire.
Naturally.
And Roosevelt was trying to create a new world order based on international cooperation and collective security.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
It sounds like a recipe for disaster waiting to happen. And, well, we all know what happened next. The Cold War, the nuclear arms race, proxy wars that raged across the globe.
The seeds of conflict were sown even as the Allies celebrated their victory.
Right.
The wartime alliance, forged in the crucible of conflict, couldn't withstand the ideological and geopolitical pressures that emerged in the post-war world.
It's a reminder that even in the face of a common enemy, old rivalries and mistrust can quickly resurface.
Absolutely.
It's like they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
But once that shared thread is gone, those temporary alliances can crumble faster than a stale cookie.
Exactly. The Allied victory in World War II was a remarkable achievement, a testament to human courage, resilience, and cooperation.
Yeah.
But it also serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of alliances,
Right.
the enduring power of ideology and national interest, and the constant struggle to maintain peace in a world riddled with conflict.
Okay, so we focus a lot on the big players, but this wasn't just about the big three.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of smaller countries involved,
Yeah,
each with their own unique stories and contributions.
absolutely. We can't forget about the countless individuals and nations who fought and died in this global conflict.
Right.
Their sacrifices were just as important, and their stories deserve to be remembered.
For example, you've got countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand who sent their young men off to fight in faraway lands.
Right.
They didn't have empires to protect or global ambitions, but they stepped up anyway, fighting alongside the Brits and the Americans.
Their commitment to the Allied cause was unwavering,
Yeah.
and their contributions were invaluable.
They fought in some of the most brutal battles of the war, from the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of Burma, demonstrating extraordinary courage and resilience.
Absolutely.
They didn't have to get involved, but they did.
Right.
Shows that sometimes doing the right thing means standing up to bullies,
Yeah.
even when it's not in your immediate self-interest.
Their actions embodied the principles of collective security and international cooperation.
Right.
The belief that threats to peace anywhere are ultimately threats to peace everywhere. It's a reminder that even small nations can play a significant role in shaping the course of history.
And let's not forget about the countries that were occupied by the Axis powers, like Poland, Norway, and the Netherlands. They might have been conquered, but their spirit of resistance never died.
Their resistance movements played a crucial role in undermining the Axis war effort,
Yeah.
providing intelligence, conducting sabotage operations, and keeping the flame of hope alive.
Those resistance fighters were badass.
They were.
Operating behind enemy lines,
Yeah.
blowing up bridges, assassinating collaborators, and generally making life hell for the Nazis.
Their bravery and resilience were truly inspiring. They faced unimaginable dangers, enduring torture, imprisonment, and often execution, yet they persevered, embodying the indomitable spirit of human defiance in the face of oppression.
Right. Those folks weren't messing around. They were fighting for their lives, for their families, for their countries. They understood what was at stake, and they were willing to do whatever it took to resist the Nazi war machine.
And their contributions were crucial. They helped to weaken the enemy from within. Providing valuable intelligence to the Allies and disrupting their operations, they were a constant thorn in the side of the Nazi occupiers. demonstrating that even the most brutal regimes cannot crush the human spirit.
Okay, so we've talked about the big three, the smaller allied nations and the resistance movements.
Yeah.
But there's another group we need to mention, the co-belligerents.
Ah, yes.
Those slippery bastards who started out on the Axis side, but eventually switched teams.
Ah, yes, the co-belligerents, those who abandoned a sinking ship
Right.
and sought refuge in the Allied lifeboat.
Italy, Romania, Bulgaria, Finland.
Yeah.
They all saw the writing on the wall and realized they'd backed the wrong horse.
Their motivations were complex.
Yeah.
A mix of self-preservation, opportunism, and a genuine desire to break free from the grip of fascism.
They flipped sides, hoping to minimize the damage, maybe even gain some favors from the victors.
Their decisions were undoubtedly pragmatic, but they also reflected a shifting political landscape as the tide of war turned against the Axis powers. Some saw an opportunity to reclaim lost territory, others sought to avoid Soviet domination, and still others genuinely believed that siding with the Allies was the best hope for a better future.
It's like they were playing a game of musical chairs, and when the music stopped, they scrambled to find an empty seat.
Their actions highlight the fluid nature of alliances in wartime, the shifting calculations of national interest, and the enduring desire for survival, even at the expense of loyalty or principle.
But let's be honest, switching sides wasn't exactly a walk in the park, was it?
No.
I mean, Italy basically descended into civil war, with fascists fighting against anti-fascists.
The transition was often violent and chaotic.
Yeah.
As internal divisions erupted, loyalties were tested.
Sure.
And the legacy of collaboration haunted the political landscape.
Yeah.
For many of these countries, switching sides meant a period of intense turmoil and uncertainty.
Yeah, imagine trying to explain to your grandma why you're suddenly fighting alongside the guys you were trying to kill yesterday. Must have been a real head-scratcher for some folks.
It's a reminder that war is a messy, complicated affair, and the lines between good and evil, friend and foe, are often blurred. It's not always easy to discern the right path, especially when you're caught in the crossfire of global conflict.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
We've talked about the motivations, the key players, the challenges of coordination, and the shifting allegiances that define this incredible, albeit somewhat dysfunctional, alliance. But what I really want to know is, what does it all mean?
Right.
What can we learn from this historical clusterfuck?
Yeah.
Was this grand alliance truly grand, or just a temporary fix?
That's the essential question, isn't it? Distilling meaning from the chaos of the past, extracting lessons that might guide us in the present and illuminate the path forward. The Allied victory in World War II was a triumph of collective action, a testament to the power of cooperation in the face of a common enemy. But it also serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most successful alliances are often fragile, beset by internal tensions, competing interests, and the enduring challenge of reconciling divergent visions for the future.
So even when you're fighting on the same side, you've got to watch your back.
Yeah.
And even when you win, there's no guarantee that the peace will last.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it? The tendency for power struggles and competing interests to reassert themselves even in the aftermath of a shared victory. The Allies' story underscores the complexities of international relations, the importance of clear communication, the need for compromise, and the constant vigilance required to maintain unity in the face of adversity. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that history is not a static narrative, but a dynamic process, a constant struggle between opposing forces, a never-ending quest for balance and stability in a world perpetually teetering on the brink of chaos.
Damn, that's some deep shit. Makes you wonder if any alliance, no matter how grand or necessary, can ever truly overcome those fundamental differences in ideology and national interest.
Perhaps the real lesson lies not in seeking permanent solutions, but in embracing the messy, unpredictable nature of human affairs. It's about recognizing that conflict is an inherent part of the human experience, and the best we can hope for is to manage it constructively, to find ways to channel our differences into productive dialogue and cooperation, and to strive for a world where peace, however fleeting, is always worth fighting for.
Well, on that note, let's grab another beer and dive into the final round of this historical brawl.
Sounds good.
We've still got some loose ends to tie up, and I'm sure you won't want to miss the grand finale. All right, you magnificent bastards, welcome back to our deep dives into the Allies of World War II.
Yes.
We've been digging through the trenches of history, uncovering the motivations, the betrayals,
Right.
and the sheer insanity that defined this alliance. Now, before we wrap this shit up, there are a couple of loose ends we need to tie up.
Okay.
We talked about how the Allies coordinated their efforts. Those high-level conferences where the big three hash things out, like a drunken poker game. But what about the actual structure of the alliance? Did they have some kind of formal agreement, a set of rules to keep those unruly bastards in line?
Well, initially it was a bit of a free-for-all, held together by duct tape and desperation.
Sounds about right.
But as the war dragged on, they realized they needed a more solid framework for cooperation, something to prevent the whole damn thing from collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions.
So they finally decided to get their shit together and create some kind of rule book.
Well,
was it like a global version of Fight Club with a bunch of secret rules and underground meetings?
Not quite that dramatic,
Sure.
But they did take a significant step in January 1942 with the signing of the Declaration by United Nations.
Right.
This document, signed by 26 nations, formally established the Allied Alliance and outlined their shared goals.
The United Nations, the granddaddy of all international organizations. So the seeds of the UN were actually sown amidst the chaos of World War II. Talk about finding a silver lining in a mushroom cloud.
Precisely. The wartime alliance, with all its flaws and tensions, provided the impetus for creating a more permanent framework for international cooperation. It was a recognition that the old ways of doing things had failed miserably,
Right.
and that a new approach was needed to prevent future catastrophes.
Kind of ironic, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Out of the ashes of the most destructive war in human history, they managed to create an organization dedicated to preventing future wars.
Yeah.
It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline, but somehow it actually worked.
Well, it's worked to a degree. The UN has certainly played a role in mitigating conflict and promoting cooperation, but it's also been plagued by its own share of problems: bureaucracy, political gridlock, and the enduring challenge of reconciling national interests with the pursuit of global peace.
Right, because getting a bunch of countries to agree on anything is about as easy as herding cats. But hey, at least they tried, right? It's better than just throwing your hands up and saying, fuck it, let's all nuke each other.
Right.
So this declaration by United Nations, what exactly did it entail? Did it actually have any teeth? Or was it just a bunch of empty promises and diplomatic handshakes?
It was more than just symbolic.
Okay.
It formalized the big three, the US, the UK, and the USSR, and China, as the four policemen responsible for maintaining international security. It was a recognition of their newfound power and influence in the post-war world.
The four policemen. Sounds a bit like a 1940s detective movie, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You've got the tough-talking American cop, the stiff upper-lip British detective, the enigmatic Russian spy, and the wise but mysterious Chinese master.
An interesting analogy, but it reflects the prevailing mindset of the time, the idea that these four powers, having emerged victorious from the war, would shoulder the responsibility of keeping the peace.
Right.
And preventing future conflicts.
But we all know how that turned out, don't we? The four policemen quickly became rivals.
Yeah.
And the world descended into the Cold War.
Right.
A decades-long standoff between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. It's like those buddy cop movies where the partners start out hating each other,
Right.
then learn to respect each other, and then end up shooting at each other in the final showdown.
It's a reminder that power dynamics are rarely static.
Right.
That alliances forged in the crucible of conflict often crumble under the weight of peacetime pressures and competing interests. The four policemen concept was a noble idea, but it was ultimately doomed to fail.
Yeah.
As the underlying ideological and geopolitical tensions between the superpowers proved too powerful to overcome.
So even with the best of intentions, those grand visions of a peaceful and cooperative world order can quickly unravel. It's like building a sandcastle on a beach only to have the tide come in and wash it all away.
The path to lasting peace is rarely straightforward. It requires constant vigilance, diplomacy, and a willingness to compromise even when faced with seemingly irreconcilable differences.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that conflict is an inherent part of the human experience, and the key is to manage it constructively, to prevent it from escalating into something truly catastrophic.
Yeah, because once those nukes start flying, it's game over for everyone.
Yeah.
So the Allies might have won the war, but building a lasting peace proved to be a whole different kind of battle. It's like winning the lottery, only to have your family turn on you and fight over the money.
Indeed. The challenges of peace building, of reconciling past grievances, rebuilding shattered societies, and fostering trust and cooperation are often as complex and demanding as the challenges of war itself. It requires patience, empathy, and a willingness to confront the demons of the past,
Right.
both individual and collective.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the allies of World War II.
We have.
We've explored the triumphs, the tragedies, the betrayals, and the enduring legacy of this extraordinary alliance. It's been a wild ride through the blood-soaked battlefields of history, and hopefully you've learned a thing or two along the way.
Indeed.
We've seen how a group of unlikely partners, driven by a common enemy, came together to defeat one of the most evil regimes in human history. We've also seen how the seeds of future conflict were sown even as they celebrated victory, and how the quest for peace is an ongoing struggle,
Yeah,
a constant balancing act between competing interests and ideologies.
absolutely.
So next time you crack open a history book, remember the allies of World War II. Remember their courage, their resilience,
Yeah,
and their sheer bloody-mindedness in the face of overwhelming odds. And remember that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope for a better future.
hope.
It just takes a willingness to fight for it, to learn from the mistakes of the past, and to strive for a world where cooperation and understanding triumph over hatred and division.
And perhaps most importantly, remember that history is not just a collection of dusty old stories.
Right.
It's a living, breathing tapestry woven from the threads of human experience, a constant reminder of our capacity for both good and evil, and a source of invaluable lessons for navigating the complexities of the present
Yeah.
and shaping the possibilities of the future.
And on that note, you magnificent bastards, it's time to raise a glass to those who fought and died in the name of freedom. May their sacrifices never be forgotten, and may their legacy inspire us to build a world worthy of their memory. Cheers.